where you were, the situation, how you felt.
Oh.
2 10 21, everything. Like play by play of all of it. Like, but how your feelings.
My feelings.
Yeah. Were
I
you afraid? Were you excited? Were you like, F this?
wasn't really sure. The first time I used
Well,
drugs,
ask the question.
so yeah, the first time I used drugs um, was just smoking weed, and so first time I used drugs was just smoking weed, and I was in fifth grade, so I was like 10 years old. I was with some buddies that were friends of mine from school, and we were actually in the Boy Scouts together.
No.
Yeah, and it was mostly like there was a few of them, and so they all had like older siblings, and they were the ones that would get the weed that we would smoke, you know. And so actually this time it was with my buddy. I was like three or four of them, and his older sister was there, and it was in the west side of L.A. and was by they were by like the Bluffs, like by PCH. So we would go to like some abandoned houses and go and smoke weed and stuff in there.
How old
And
were you?
so I was 10 years old. I was in fifth grade, and so I remember we went to this like abandoned house. It was me and like three or four of my buddies, and they had all been smoking weed before, and I'd never smoked. And so I don't know if they knew I had never smoked before.
How old were your buddies?
We were all the same age, but they all had like older siblings. It was three other dudes, and they each had an older sibling that like they used to smoke weed with or whatever. And so I remember like I had been like wanting to do it, but I had never smoked before, and so like I was all kind of like anxious. Remember we smoked out of one of those like little metal pipes. It was retarded. It was back in the day, and four people were smoking out of glass, and so like I remember smoking. Like I had smoked cigarettes and stuff, so like
How old were you when you smoked your first cigarette?
maybe like a year younger or something like that, or
No.
no, a few years younger because my mom used to smoke cigarettes. We used to
From
steal
one
her
person.
cigarettes, yeah. And so I remember hitting it and like holding it in. And the funny part is, it didn't really do anything. I didn't really get high, which was kind of lame. In the, you know,
It's kind of lame.
well, I mean, like I was expecting all this to happen. And then, I remember I felt all nervous and like anxious and
Before or after?
before, and then like after, after we sat there and smoked, passed it around a few times or whatnot. And then I remember we were like going back to my buddy's house, and like all of my buddies and everybody was acting kind of silly, like running around doing silly stuff, and I didn't feel anything, and but I like totally acted the part. I like acted like I felt it, which was retarded, absolutely stupid. But and sure enough, I think we smoked later again that night, and then like next thing you know, I'm hanging out over there all the time and smoking weed all the time, and we were drinking back then. We were drinking like Mickey's 40-ounce bottles.
How old were the siblings of these people?
So we were like in fifth grade. I remember that Dr. Dre's The Chronic, the first album that just came out, and so their siblings. So like I was in fifth grade. I think she was in like ninth grade or 10th grade.
The sibling?
Yeah,
That's not that old either, though.
yeah. And then so they were in ninth or 10th grade, and then they used to have like this like office that was separated from their house, and so we would go like we would sleep out there on the weekends and stuff like that. And I remember one of them had her girlfriend come over. I remember I was like laying in the little fold out bed. I remember like, what her girlfriend taking advantage of me.
How old were you?
I was I was in fifth grade.
How old
I
was
was
she?
10th grade. I was 10 years old, and she was like a ninth or a 10th grader.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was like the first time I like smoked weed, and was drinking out. We drink all the time and smoke cigarettes all the time. We were wearing those like big baggy Fresh Jive pants back then. Uh, what else was going on back then? That was like right around the time of the riots, the LA riots. Um,
Did your parents ever find out, or when did they find out?
yeah, they ended up finding out like the next year. So I mean, I started smoking all the time after that, and then in sixth grade, I was in middle school, and I remember I had a sack of weed. I remember exactly what I was wearing. I was wearing some like silver Dickie pants, some like yeah, gray Dickie pants. I had on like the white Pumas with like the black, they were like all white with like the black, and it had like the black fat laces in them. I remember I had this black shirt on. It was like a spy versus spy shirt. They were like kind of like those con art shirts back in the day. And we were in class, and my buddy Chris was like sitting behind me, and he was like, "Oh, let me see the sack." And I'm like, "Man, no, wait until after class." He's like, "Oh, let me see it, let me see it." And so he just kept bugging me. So I slid it to him. I just like passed it back to him, and then a few minutes later, he like hands it to me, but like hands it like over my shoulder, like onto my chest, and I like it was super obvious, and I snatched it, and the teacher had seen it, and she ends up saying, "Hey, what was that?" And I was like, "Nothing. It's a She was like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a note." She was like, "What does it say?" And I was like, "Says we think you're hot."
What grade were you in?
This was sixth grade, the next year. And then she was like, "Let me see it." And I was like, "Nah, can't do that." And so she came up, she like approached me, and I like had it like tucked between my legs. And then next thing you know, she's like tackling me in my little like school desk, like with the wooden thing. And so she like pulls me out of the chair like onto the ground. I like dropped it between my legs, and I kicked it back to my buddy Chris. And so he like picked it up and beelined it for the back door, and I'm like on the ground, and she's like on top of me. I'm like, "Look, I don't have anything." And Chris gets to the back door. I'm like, and he stops at the back door. I'm like, "Go, man! What are you doing? Go, you know." She yells at him. She's like, "Chris, come here." And dude stops and turns around and walks back up to the front. And she sticks out her hand, and he hands it to her. And she totally thought it was a note or something, because the look on her face when she saw it was like a little sack of weed. She was like all super surprised. And this was right around lunchtime. And right then it was lunch, and the school officer, we had a cop like at the school, came up to the classroom with the dean. They actually put me and my buddy Chris in handcuffs, and walked us down in front of the entire school during lunchtime in handcuffs,
How
and
popular did
took
that
us
make
to
you?
the office. I don't know. I was kind of embarrassed. I thought it was dumb. Um, but we got suspended for a week. We were able to come back to school. But at that point in time, my parents knew that I was at least smoking weed and stuff like that. So
Do you think that there was any way to avoid that? Ask the question.
it was just, was there any way to avoid that? Um, I think, my parents, I'm not taking responsibility for my actions. I think just like the breakup of our family a few years prior when I was 7 played a role in it. It was just we were in a single parent home, like living with my mom, my brother, and I. And I can't really blame her. She did everything she could. She tried to be as supportive and make sure we were happy. So it's like, at the same point in time, I believe it's not in a mother's natural role to be like. I mean, she is a disciplinarian, but it's not the same as a father being a disciplinarian. So, and then especially due to those circumstances, our father not being around, it kind of made the situation a little more difficult. So, just uh, the whole dynamic of our family unit was disrupted a few years prior. And so with that, I kind of think it helped, or did not help, promote any kind of like accountability for me. It just enabled me to be run around free reign, and kind of get into trouble. And at that point, I had an excuse for getting in trouble. Oh, my parents just got divorced. You know what I mean? Or they were like, "Oh, poor kid, his parents just got divorced." And I was like, okay, I can just do whatever I want now, and I, won't get in trouble for it. Um,
Do you think anything could have been done to stop you, like from getting further on?
really think that it's people, places, and things. So the friends that I was associating with, um, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been a good idea to be supportive of me hanging out with those kids. However, there's a lot of like, at that point in time, I think there would need to be like a lot of like self work that would need to be done. You know what I mean? Like identify the problems, like what's causing it. Is it just something that's like being done for acceptance or whatnot? So, just like anything else in life, I think that, um, just would have had to have been a lot of, self work, um, that would have made it maybe have had a different, a different effect on it. Um, it's hard to say, but I think just like really the destruction of the family nucleus, like there not being a mother and a father, really does kind of just not provide the best environment for a kid, especially a boy if the father's not around. I mean, he was around to an extent, but just not living in the home. So, you done killing that spider over there,
How'd you know it was a spider?
babe?
Mm-hmm. How to end it?
Huh?
How to end it?
How to end it?
Yeah, like what?
What?
What would you do if your 10-year-old kid was in the same situation?
What would I do if my 10-year-old kid was in the same
He found
situation?
out if he found out that you.
I'd smack the heck out of his butt, man. He'd lose all privileges.
Uh-huh.
Um, Absolutely. Doors coming off your room.
Mm-hmm.
You're not having, you're not going out. You're grounded. You're doing more than just like your chores. Like uh, you're not hanging out with those kids anymore. Um, and just like, but I would spend time with a kid and help like kind of just understand like, hey, so why did you want to do that? Like, what caused you to want to do that? What motivated you? Was there anything that like what was lacking or what was in excess? Like just kind of like identify the problem. Like not really focus too much like on the problem, but just kind of like identifying it and then like looking at a solution, like what can be done to prevent it, what if it can be avoided, what was the cause of it. I wouldn't sit there and like harp on the kid for making a bad bad decision. I would just kind of help him like reflect, like detach from it, kind of like identify it, what caused it, stuff like that. Just kind of analyze it like anything else.
Do you think that would have helped you if somebody did that with you?
I think it's possible. It wasn't really that wasn't really done. I was like went and hung out with my dad for a week at work and then went back to school. So, but that wasn't the,
Full privileges, like, and everything?
yeah, pretty much, or nothing severe that I can recall.
Yeah.
So, it's tough though. I mean, like, parents do the best that they can do, and I don't blame anybody for anything. Um, but it definitely was led to like the biggest handicap. I mean, me smoking weed continued till I was 26 years old, and like all it did was prevent me from excelling in life and accomplishing new. I mean, new. I mean, who knows how much I would have accomplished, So, because it just is not a. It's not a motivator, It's just smoke weed and want to chill, hang out, eat food, not do anything. But I mean, people say like, oh, I smoke weed, I get energized. Like, yeah, you might be energized to do a little something or something, but you're definitely not accomplishing all your goals. And or I'll just say I wasn't accomplishing all my goals. I'll use I statements. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. But So I just I just see what I'm accomplishing today. Like
The opposite?
within a year, I've accomplished things that would have taken numerous years to accomplish in the past. And just being clean, sober, healthy diet, exercising all the time,
Waking up at 3:30.
waking up early in the morning, before the sun is up, getting after it, and just
Staying in the work.
yeah, staying in the Word. So everything happens for a reason, though. I mean, I'm grateful for it. It gave me a good testimony to share with other people, and hopefully I can help people from making any kind of the same bad decisions I made and going down a long path. I mean, because here I am now 42 years old, and it's like, I've done a lot I've accomplished a lot in my life, but the things that I could have accomplished would have been far greater. So, but I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started.
You.
Yeah,
Okay, next question.
let's go.
You want to turn it off?
7 o'clock already, babe.
Okay.